Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are stepping inside the mind of a professional attacker. We're going to look at the meticulous strategy, the deep planning, and the patient reconnaissance that happens long before any major cyber attack ever gets launched. And let me tell you, you can forget that stereotype of some person frantically typing in a dark room. The reality is way more calculated. You're looking at a quote from Kevin Mitnick, probably the most famous hacker in the world. Now, this isn't some random guess. It's a calculated chess move. And this one moment, it reveals a huge truth. The most successful attacks, they don't start with code. They start with a conversation and a really well-researched plan.
So, first things first, let's just shatter a very common myth. Because the first step to really understanding an attacker is to unlearn everything Hollywood has taught us.
Yeah, that Hollywood hacker, pure fantasy. The real threat is so much more methodical, way more intelligent. You need to think less of a digital sledgehammer and more of a patient architect, or maybe even a spy. Someone who's meticulously studying the blueprints, looking for a single, subtle weakness before they even think about touching the tools.
And that brings us to the first, and you could argue the most critical phase of any professional attack. Security pros call this the first link in the kill chain. It has nothing to do with breaking in. It's all about drawing an incredibly detailed map of the target. So how do they do it? Well, the primary tool for this is something called open source intelligence, or OSINT for short. This is basically the art of using the exact same public resources you and I use every day, search engines, social media, public records, to build a massive dossier on a target organization.
So, what's on their shopping list? Well, think about it. Every little piece of public info becomes a potential piece of the puzzle. A LinkedIn profile? That gives them names and roles. A job posting for a network engineer might just reveal the exact type of firewall a company uses. Even things like public key certificates can expose details about an organization's internal network.
And here's what's really wild about this. This entire initial intelligence gathering phase is completely passive. It leaves zero digital fingerprints. That makes it almost impossible for a company to even know it's being scoped out for an attack.
Okay, let's keep going. Once that map is drawn, the attacker starts to actively look for the weakest points of entry. And this is so crucial. Those weak points, they are not always technical.
You see, a skilled attacker is always weighing two different kinds of vulnerabilities. On one side, you have your technical flaws, right? Like a server running old, unpatched software. But on the other side, you have human flaws, like our natural desire to be helpful, or our fear of getting in trouble with an authority figure. And so often, the human flaw is the easier, more reliable way in.
But hey, let's not discount the tech side. A single line of code can create a massive vulnerability. A classic example is something called a buffer overflow. Just imagine a program has a box, a buffer, and it's designed to hold, say, 10 letters. An attacker finds a way to stuff 100 letters into it. Well, those extra letters have to go somewhere. They spill out, they overwrite the memory next to the box, and that can potentially let the attacker inject their own malicious instructions and take control of the whole system.
And that brings us to what might be the most powerful tool in the attacker's entire arsenal. It's the one that often bypasses billions of dollars in security technology completely. I'm talking about hacking the human mind.
The strategy here is it's just brilliant in its simplicity. An attacker won't start by going after the chief information security officer. No way. Instead, they'll target someone whose job it is to be helpful. A receptionist, a help desk technician, maybe someone in accounts payable. This isn't magic. It's a repeatable psychological process. First, they build a pretext, a believable story. Then they establish rapport to build trust. Once that trust is there, they exploit it to make the request. And finally, boom, they execute their goal, like getting a password reset or tricking an employee into clicking a malicious link.
One of the key psychological triggers they love to exploit is called reciprocal altruism. You know how this works. Author Christopher Hodnog explains it perfectly. If someone holds a door open for you, you feel this almost automatic obligation to hold the next door for them. A social engineer uses that same principle. By offering a tiny, seemingly helpful piece of information, they make you feel indebted, which makes you way more likely to give them what they really want.
Okay, this is absolutely crucial. We have to understand that these same skills, reconnaissance, finding vulnerabilities, social engineering, they're used by both the criminals and the defenders. The entire difference, the whole thing, comes down to one simple but critical concept: permission. An ethical hacker, you might hear them called a penetration tester or a red teamer, they have explicit written permission from a company to attack their systems. They have to operate within a strict scope, and their only goal is to find weaknesses so they can be fixed. A criminal attacker? Well, they have no permission, no rules, and they're only in it for themselves.
So let's get to the main point. Why did we just spend all this time inside an attacker's head? Because understanding their mindset, that is the single most important requirement for building an effective defense. Period.
It's simple. You just cannot defend what you don't understand. By anticipating an attacker's path, from that initial OSINT phase all the way to exploiting some human or technical flaw, you can build smarter, more resilient defenses. And honestly, as security experts always say, just focusing on the basics like patching, two-factor authentication, and employee training, that can neutralize the vast majority of attacks before they even get started.
And that question just perfectly illustrates the central challenge of modern security, doesn't it? We invest so much in technology to build these digital walls, but attackers know that the easiest way in is often just to ask a person to open the door. So for any security architect out there, it leaves us with a critical question to think about. Are we spending as much time trying to understand our attackers as we do building our walls?